When we buy something, there's often a sell by date on it or a use by date. And it's important not to exceed that because it might poison us, particularly if it's a food, or it might have degraded to the point it's no longer usable or serviceable. But does that apply to cars? Do cars hit a magic mileage or a magic age when they die and we should be replacing them? A lot of manufacturers, it's fair to say, would probably like us to throw our car away when the warranty expires and buy a new one. But let's face it, that's not going to happen, especially with the amount of money that they're charging for new cars now and the amount of gadgets and unnecessary features that are being added to these modern cars. Over the years, I've often had multiple people say to me they always sell a car at 70,000 miles because at that point you start running up lots of bills. And also in the case of diesels, they may extend that a little bit. 100,000 miles is also another figure that keeps cropping up in terms of general lifespan of a car. But is that true? Do cars hit a set mileage and then start experiencing lots of problems? Well, a lot has to do with the way the car has been looked after. Rather than the actual mileage that's been clocked up, it's more important to look at how those miles have been clocked up. For example, an old lady taking the car out for 1 mile every week would have a very low mileage, but that car has done most of its journeys on a very, very cold engine. She's probably not worried about the servicing because the mileage is so low and the oil has degraded to the point it's no longer lubricating the engine due to the oil dilution that takes place in cars that are often driven very short distances and never really get up to operating temperature. And then conversely, you compare that with the executive that does 100,000 miles in a matter of 3 or 4 years. And most of that is on motorways. The engine has warmed up. The car has been fastidiously serviced because it's a company expense. And you'll often find that fleet managers try to keep their cars in good order. There's obviously exceptions to that, and a lot of people with a company car will just abuse it. The fact it is a company car is no guarantee that it's going to be a reliable car. It's very much down to the way it's been driven and also the way it has been serviced. When we strip down an engine that's done 100,000 miles, if it's had regular oil changes and it's been looked after and properly serviced, you will notice two things. Firstly, the carbon buildup is minimal, and also the components inside the engine that are subject to wear and tear show very little wear and tear when you compare it to a car that's maybe done 70,000 miles and hasn't had regular oil changes and regular services. And that lower mileage car will also generally have a worse carbon buildup problem. But it's not always just about the way we look after the car and the way we drive it. The car brand also comes into it. Some car manufacturers have an enviable reputation of producing supremely reliable cars, and I'm thinking particularly of Toyota and Lexus that always sit at the top of the reliability table. In fact, those reliability tables are often dominated by the Japanese car brands. And if you've got one of these super reliable brands that have made your car, that again is a guarantee that the car is going to go on a lot longer than it would have done if it was made by one of these other companies that have a terrible reputation for reliability. We also need to find out if it's got things like timing chains, timing belts, wet belts. There's other videos that I've done that go into these in more detail. But generally speaking, quality chains last the length of the engine in many cases. There are obviously some exceptions out there, and belts do certainly need replacing at the 7 to 10 year mark, the 70,000 mile mark. It depends again on the manufacturer of the engine, and wet belts are often a problem. They're expensive to replace, they're fiddly, they degrade and pretty much destroy the engine if they've not been replaced and looked after. Perhaps the takeaway from that is just to avoid any car that has a wet belt inside it. So we're buying a car, what information do we need in order to determine if it's likely to be an ultra reliable car? Well, the first top of my list is always checking the service history. If there is no evidence of a full service history that is stamped in the service book by a dealer or a reputable franchised garage or non-franchised garage, then I will walk away. I will not touch a relatively new car if it has not been looked after by a specialist. And ideally, I want to see that the oil changes and service intervals have been reduced. They've not been pushed beyond what the manufacturer recommends, but actually have been brought back and actually have been shortened a little. Another red flag is frequent changes of owner. If the car is 10 years old and it has had 4 owners in the last 2 years, that could indicate there is some inherent problem with the car. It doesn't always, but frequent changes of ownership is often down to someone just buying a car, running it, not particularly caring about it, and then selling it on. So you're effectively buying all of the problems that they've ignored, all the maintenance that they haven't done. And I've been caught out by that myself in the past. Check the receipts as well. If a lot of major work has been carried out. Now, things I'm particularly looking out for is if it had a particulate filter and that's been replaced twice in the last 5 years, that can indicate there are other problems with the way the car is working or running. If it's had a new head gasket, or if the gearbox has needed to be replaced, or it's got a new engine, these all, to many buyers, indicate that the car has been looked after and you're buying something in good condition. But the question you have to ask is, why was this work done? Why was it needed? And we really do need to speak to the owner, and hopefully they're going to be honest and they'll actually tell us what problems they've had or what the issues were that led up to these major repairs that were needed. You ideally want to see a lot of receipts for the little things, the brake pads, the consumable items, the air filters. They're often included within the service history and the service log, but it's nice to know that the owner of the car has just kept on top of the little things that crop up. And any car, like all of us, it needs attention over the years. Things start wearing out. It's good to talk to the owner about their cold start warm-up routine. If they don't know about it at all and they haven't got a clue, don't buy the car off them. If they've abused the car while it was cold, that'll often be a red flag that there's going to be looming problems. If they say they watch this channel, then that's a good thing, because these are all topics that I've covered to death in the past, and we've discussed looking after cars and maintaining them. And if they've got that mechanical sympathy and appreciation, they're going to have looked after the car, so you're buying a good one. Check the car as it starts up. Often things that happen when the engine is cold are not evident on a warm engine, and that's often a sign for the overall condition of the engine. In that case, then, we are listening out for knocks and rattles and smoke coming from the exhaust that may well solve itself as the engine warms up and everything beds in properly. We'll also check for leaks in the engine bay, leaks under the car, the smell of oil, the smell of fuel. These can all be red flags, and again, there's videos that I've done that cover those topics in more detail, but they can all indicate that there may be a problem looming on that car that we're thinking of buying. But sadly, we have to acknowledge that a lot of modern cars are just not going to last as long as older cars. The sheer complexity of them, the emission control systems, there's lots of problems that loom on these, particularly if cars have particulate filters, and that applies to most cars that are being sold now, certainly here in the UK and across Europe. Let me know what the situation's like in your country. Particulate filters on diesels are prone to clogging up and degrading over time. As the engine gets old, it's more inclined to clog up the particulate filter or need more frequent regenerations or more frequent cleaning. The catalyst, the SCR, the injecting fluids into the exhaust stream to aid the emissions, all of these add a lot more complexity to an engine, and they can often lead to breakdowns and problems further down the line. And also, a lot of car manufacturers now are using plastic parts. We've seen plastic intakes on engines where they can precisely design the intake, the flow, get it right, and then manufacture it in plastic. But over time, that plastic degrades. The old metal, the cast ones, used to last forever. There's obviously a performance and economy advantage to going with a lighter plastic. The detrimental effect of that is they're going to degrade more quickly. They're not going to last as long, and they're not as easy to remove and refit. Often with a lot of these plastic parts and plastic connectors, they need to be replaced whenever they're removed. Otherwise, they're going to fail at some point in the very near future. In the end then, my conclusion is that mileage doesn't matter. It's more important to find out how the car has been driven and how the car has been looked after over the years. Let me know what your experience has been buying cars, whether you have a set mileage or a point at which you consider the car beyond its use by date and you'll sell it or scrap it, and whether you plan to keep your car as long as possible. Have you altered the servicing intervals to make sure that your car gets up to those really high mileages? Please boot the like button if you found this video useful. It really does help this channel. And please also subscribe. We don't want you to miss out on the great content that we've got planned. And talking about great content, you'll love this video and this playlist will certainly interest you. Thanks for watching. See you in these next videos.